The philosophy of consistency. Machiavelli understood something timeless, and talent may rise quickly, but consistency endures. The most gifted athletes, thinkers, and leaders are nothing without the habits that sustain them. Consistency builds trust, and trust builds empires. Let's break it down with fresh insights and examples so each part stands out. Talent versus consistency. Why one outlasts the other? Talent can spark a moment. Consistency builds a legacy. History is full of prodigies who rose fast but faded because they lacked habits to carry them through hard times. The truth is, talent without discipline often burns out. Consistency, on the other hand, compounds over time. It transforms small, daily actions into enduring reputations. Consider the difference between a gifted athlete who trains only when inspired and one who practices at the same hour every day, rain or shine. The second may not start as spectacularly, but over time, the steady repetition sharpens skill, strengthens resilience, and builds trust with everyone watching. The hidden power of daily rituals. Marcus Aurelius, writing meditations each morning. Wasn't about public image, it was private discipline, shaping public character. Likewise, military leaders studying maps late into the night weren't just learning strategy. They were training their minds to stay calm and decisive under pressure. Modern parallels exist everywhere. Entrepreneurs reading the same financial reports before dawn. Musicians running scales long after fame arrives. Athletes practicing fundamentals when no cameras are around. These habits create mental grooves that hold steady even in chaos. Machiavelli's insight and why it endures. Machiavelli wrote that the quality of a ruler could be measured by the people around him. But why did these people stay loyal? It wasn't just charisma or raw intelligence, it was predictability in character and clarity in action. Followers need to know where a leader stands. A steady hand in crisis earns trust. A disciplined routine earns respect. Over time, consistency sends a powerful signal. This person will not waver when it matters most. Credibility. Power. The real sequence. The usual story says power brings credibility, but the opposite is true. People follow those they can rely on. When words and actions line up over years, not days, credibility grows. And with credibility comes influence, alliances, and eventually power that lasts longer than a single moment of brilliance. This is why consistency sits quietly at the root of every empire, every movement, every lasting achievement. It's the invisible engine behind visible success. Inner peace in a Machiavellian world. But where does consistency come from? It begins inside. This line sets the stage. Real consistency. The ability to act with steadiness over time doesn't come from rules, external pressure, or even sheer willpower alone. It comes from a centered mind. If someone is internally chaotic, their actions will be erratic too. You cannot build outward stability on inner turmoil. To govern others, you must first govern yourself. Here the point is simple but profound. Leadership begins with self-mastery. A ruler who can't control emotions, impulses, or fears becomes unpredictable and untrustworthy. History is full of leaders who lost kingdoms because pride, rage, or insecurity made them reckless. The best leaders start by mastering their own minds before trying to master anything else. Machiavelli knew that a ruler consumed by anger, fear, or chaos would crumble before his enemies even attacked. Machiavelli, often seen as the ultimate strategist, understood that enemies look for weakness, and emotional instability is the biggest weakness of all. A ruler who lashes out in anger or panics under pressure doesn't even need to be defeated. He defeats himself. Calmness, then, becomes a weapon. It denies enemies the chaos they hope to exploit. Inner peace is not passivity. It is not weakness. This challenges the misconception that staying calm means being soft or indecisive. In reality, inner peace takes strength. Anyone can panic or rage. It takes power to stay steady. A calm leader can act decisively because emotion isn't clouding judgment. It is the quiet confidence to stay calm when the world burns around you. It is the strength to choose strategy over impulse, clarity over confusion. This is about composure in crisis. A leader who remains clear-headed when everything falls apart can see opportunities others miss. Choosing strategy over impulse means acting deliberately, not reactively. Think of the Renaissance leaders who ruled empires yet found time for art, philosophy, and reflection. This points to balance. The greatest leaders didn't only fight wars or pass laws, they cultivated the mind. Art, philosophy, and reflection kept them grounded, expanded their thinking, and prevented their ambition from consuming them. They knew that a mind at war with itself cannot win any battle outside. If you're battling insecurity, rage, or fear internally, those conflicts will bleed into every decision. Victory outside requires peace inside. Self-mastery isn't just personal growth, it's a survival skill for leaders. Inner peace is the soil where consistency grows. And from consistency comes power. Finally, the metaphor ties everything together. Inner peace, the foundation. Consistency, the steady growth that follows. Power, the fruit produced over time. The argument is that power isn't built on dramatic moments or flashes of brilliance. It's built on calmness, habits, trust, influence, lasting power, rituals and habits for power. So how do we cultivate this power in daily life? Through rituals, through habits, through small, repeated actions that slowly carve the statue of our character. This opening is saying power doesn't appear suddenly, it's sculpted over time. Think of Michelangelo carving David. He didn't create it in a day. Every stroke revealed a little more of the form beneath the stone. Similarly, rituals and habits slowly shape who we become. They seem small and ordinary in the moment, but over years, they create an extraordinary result: character. Morning rituals, daily reflection, evening planning. This short rhythm of phrases captures the structure successful people give their lives. Morning rituals start the day with intention. Exercise, reading, meditation, or even writing a to-do list signal to the mind. This day has purpose. Daily. Reflection allows for course correction. Without it, we repeat mistakes. With it, we learn faster than others. Evening planning ensures the next day begins with direction rather than chaos. It's like sharpening your tools before the next battle. These simple practices separate days of drifting from days of discipline. Leonardo da Vinci kept notebooks filled with ideas, sketches, and discoveries. Marcus Aurelius wrote his private thoughts to strengthen his mind. Great generals reviewed plans before every campaign. These examples show that even history's giants relied on small, private habits, not just public achievements, to build greatness. Leonardo's notebooks weren't for show. They were a personal laboratory of curiosity and learning. Marcus Aurelius's writings weren't speeches for an audience. They were a ruler arguing with himself, refining his wisdom day by day. Generals studying maps show that victory doesn't come from bravery alone, but from preparation repeated before every battle. These rituals made them consistent, and consistency made them powerful. Your life changes when your rituals change. A single day of discipline achieves little, but a decade of discipline, it transforms a life, a career, a legacy. This contrast is powerful. People often want quick wins, but habits work like compound interest. One disciplined day feels small. 10 disciplined years change your identity, reputation, and opportunities. That's why rituals matter. They turn ambition into a system rather than a mood. Anyone can be motivated once. Few can stay disciplined long enough to see compounding results. Mental strength strategies 1. Consistency also demands mental strength. Consistency isn't just about routines. It requires a strong mind to keep showing up when emotions, distractions, and setbacks try to break your rhythm. Anyone can stick to a plan when life is easy. But true mental strength shows when you maintain discipline during chaos, boredom, or criticism. Without that strength, consistency collapses under pressure. Machiavelli advised rulers to pause before acting, to weigh decisions carefully, to separate emotion from strategy. This advice is timeless because emotions distort judgment. A ruler, or anyone making decisions, who acts in anger or fear becomes predictable and easy to manipulate. By pausing, by weighing the consequences, leaders create space between stimulus and response. That space is where strategy lives. Machiavelli knew that impulsive rulers were dangerous to themselves long before they were dangerous to others. In life, as in politics, the weak react, the strong respond. This line draws a sharp contrast. Reacting means being controlled by external events. Someone insults you, you lash out. Fear rises, you retreat. Responding means you control the timing, tone, and direction of your actions. The world pushes, but you decide how and when to push back. Strength here isn't aggression, it's mastery over your own impulses, so you act deliberately, not emotionally. When you pause before anger, you gain control over it. When you detach from fear, you see the path forward. When you observe silently before speaking, your words carry weight. Each example shows how mental strength creates advantages. Pause before anger. Anger feeds on speed. The moment you delay it, you weaken it and regain power over yourself. Detach from fear. Fear narrows vision. Distance gives perspective. letting you see solutions instead of just threats. Observe silently. People who speak after watching carefully often sound wiser, because they've absorbed more than they revealed. Their words land harder because they come rarely. The greatest leaders, from emperors to CEOs, are remembered for calmness in crisis, because the world follows the one who does not panic when others lose their heads. Crises reveal character. When everyone else scrambles, the calm leader becomes the anchor people cling to. That's why Roman emperors like Marcus Aurelius, modern wartime leaders like Winston Churchill, or CEOs guiding companies through recessions all share this trait. Composure under pressure builds trust, and trust creates followers, even in chaos. Leadership and consistency. In The Prince, Machiavelli wrote about power, alliances, and control, but beneath every tactic lay one unshakable truth. Leadership requires consistency. Machiavelli is often remembered for cunning advice: when to deceive, when to attack, when to compromise. But underneath the political maneuvering was something more fundamental. A leader must project reliability. If the ruler seems unpredictable in vision or character, allies hesitate, followers doubt, and rivals sense weakness. Even manipulation works best when people can predict a leader's long-term goals. A ruler who changes his principles with the wind will lose the loyalty of his people. Loyalty doesn't come from perfection, it comes from trust. People can forgive mistakes if they understand the leader's principles. But a ruler who shifts values to suit every moment, one day merciful, the next cruel, one day bold, the next timid, creates confusion. Followers stop believing promises because they can't see a consistent moral compass. A leader who cannot control himself cannot control his empire. This line hits at the core of Machiavelli's philosophy. Before ruling others, you must master yourself. Self-control is the foundation of power because emotions, impulses, or vanity can lead to disastrous decisions. Leaders destroyed by pride or anger often lose power, not to enemies, but to their own lack of discipline. History shows this again and again. Leaders who ruled with steadiness built legacies. Leaders who ruled with impulse destroyed themselves. History gives countless examples. Steadiness. Marcus Aurelius calmly led Rome through plagues and wars while reflecting daily on virtue. His legacy lasted centuries. Impulse. Nero ruled with extravagance, paranoia, and cruelty, burning trust as quickly as he spent treasure. His empire turned on him before his death. The pattern repeats. Calm, steady leaders outlast impulsive, erratic ones. Consistency does not mean rigidity. It means clarity of purpose and the discipline to follow it through storms, critics, and challenges. This is important because consistency isn't stubbornness. Leaders must adapt to changing circumstances, but adaptation works only when guided by unchanging principles. The goal stays clear, the methods adjust as needed. This balance, flexible tactics, firm values, is what builds both trust and resilience over time. Strength in solitude. But there is one secret many leaders shared. They were not always surrounded by people. They sought solitude. This overturns the common image of leadership as constant meetings, speeches, and crowds. The passage suggests that the public life of leaders hides a private truth. The best decisions, the boldest ideas, and the clearest strategies often emerge away from noise and company. Solitude gives leaders something crowds never can: mental space. 2. In solitude, strategies were born. In solitude, philosophies were written. In solitude, the mind sharpens like a blade before battle. Here, solitude is shown as an active force, not passive isolation. 3 things happen in that silence. Strategies were born. Without interruptions, leaders can see the big picture, think several moves ahead, and craft plans carefully rather than reacting hastily. Philosophies were written. Deep reflection requires time alone. Values and principles often take shape when leaders step back from daily chaos. The mind sharpens like a blade. Just as a blade needs grinding to cut cleanly, the mind needs solitude to cut through confusion. Machiavelli himself spent his last years in rural exile, writing The Prince far from the noise of politics. Alone, he crafted ideas that still influence the world 500 years later. This example shows solitude as a paradox. Machiavelli lost political power, but gained intellectual immortality. Removed from courtly intrigue, he could analyze power itself, its patterns, dangers, and laws, without distraction. The prince exists today because exile gave him time to think deeply rather than act hastily. Solitude is not loneliness. It is the workshop of the mind. This final line corrects a misunderstanding. Loneliness is emptiness. Solitude is preparation. Leaders who fear being alone miss the chance to clarify their thoughts, align their values, and prepare for challenges. Solitude doesn't weaken leaders. It equips them. Practical roadmap for the viewer 1. Now, how can you apply this to your life? This line shifts from theory to practice. Up to now, we've explored ideas, consistency, inner peace, leadership. But here, the focus changes to action. Philosophy becomes a personal guide. The question invites the reader to stop admiring these principles from a distance and start living them. Here is a 30-day roadmap to consistency and inner peace. The 30-day frame matters because it creates urgency without overwhelm. It's short enough to feel achievable, but long enough to create real change. Consistency often fails because people start big and quit fast. This plan grows slowly, week by week, so habits take root. Week 1. Focus. Choose one ritual to begin each day: journaling, meditation, or reading. This first step is about simplicity. Instead of redesigning your entire life, you start small. One ritual, one act of intention each morning. Journaling clears the mind by putting thoughts on paper. Meditation trains focus and calmness. Reading feeds the mind with new ideas before the day begins. The point is not which ritual you choose, but that you show up for it every day. Week 2. Rituals. Build a morning and evening routine. Begin and end your day with intention. By week 2, you expand from one ritual to a framework for the day. A morning routine sets the tone. An evening routine reflects on it. This creates rhythm. Wake with purpose, sleep with clarity. Over time, this rhythm anchors the mind no matter what chaos happens in between. Week 3. Mental strength. Practice pausing before reacting. Respond with calm, not emotion. Now the focus shifts inward. Routines build stability, but mental strength keeps it intact under stress. Learning to pause before speaking, acting, or deciding builds self-control. It's the difference between a leader who reacts out of anger and one who responds with strategy. Week 4. Leadership and peace. Share your habits with others. Lead by example, not by force. Finally, consistency moves outward. You've built focus, rituals, and mental discipline. Now you influence others, not through commands, but through example. Leadership grounded in calm, steady habits inspires people more than speeches ever could. These steps seem small, but remember, empires are not built overnight. They are built brick by brick, day by day. This closing reminds us that greatness comes from patience. The Roman Empire, the Renaissance, even modern companies weren't built in a week. Small, repeated actions form the foundation for everything big and lasting. Conclusion: the legacy of a consistent life. And so we return to the beginning. This signals the close of the journey, tying the final thoughts back to the opening ideas. It reminds the reader that what started as a reflection on power and consistency has now come full circle, with practical steps, philosophy, and examples, feeding into one unifying message. Consistency creates inner peace. Inner peace creates power, and power, guided by wisdom, creates legacy. This is a chain of cause and effect. Consistency removes chaos. Daily habits and discipline prevent life from drifting into confusion. Inner peace emerges when life has structure. The mind becomes calm rather than reactive. Power comes from that calm because people trust steady leaders and follow those who remain composed under pressure. Legacy requires more than power. It needs wisdom to use power well. Without wisdom, power fades or corrupts. With it, power builds institutions, ideas, or movements that last beyond a single lifetime. Machiavelli wrote for princes and kings, but his lessons belong to anyone who seeks a life of focus, strength, and meaning. This line broadens the lesson. The prince might have targeted rulers, but its principles, self-mastery, discipline, calmness, apply to modern life. You don't need a throne or an army to benefit. Anyone, from a student to a CEO, can use these ideas to gain control over their mind, decisions, and direction. Start with one ritual, one habit, one moment of calm each day. Here the philosophy turns practical. It insists you don't need dramatic overhauls or grand gestures to change your life. Real transformation begins quietly, with a small, consistent act repeated until it shapes character. Because the one who masters himself masters the world. This final line delivers the heart of the message. Self-mastery is the ultimate power. External victories, career success, influence, leadership start with internal victories over fear, anger, laziness, or chaos. A person who commands his own mind cannot be easily broken by circumstances or enemies.